we're going to do the oval back and forth, all up and down, because there's a lot to talk about here with the Bukele meeting, where Donald Trump went nutty mode with President Bukele of El Salvador. As you guys know, Nayib Bukele is probably the worst Palestinian descent person out there. Like, literally one of the worst, if not the worst. I would say it's like him and son of Hamas, like honorary, no longer Palestinians. Like, people get mad at like DJ Khaled for not really saying anything about Palestine or doing much about Palestine, but like, this guy straight up is the worst. Like, yeah, it's him, Richard Hanania, but he is the worst, I think. As far as like Nayib Bukele goes, he started off relatively progressive, focusing on like rehabilitation over incarceration, and then very quickly became like a cryptocurrency guy who was willing to use El Salvador as a fleshlight for Western interests, billionaires, things like that. He is a horrible, monstrous piece of. He set up the CCOT facility for anti-terrorism. And since then, there's speculation that he also worked with some of the MS-13 leadership and simultaneously decided to go on this like massive surveillance regime, massive police state regime, where his goons will go up to any street vendor or any village in the middle of the night and just black bag people and do dragnets and then claim that they're all MS-13. And then, 300 people at a time will go and sit in front of a judge who's wearing a balaclava and decide that they're all MS-13, all 300 of them. And then they get disappeared into CCOT, where they're tortured. No due process, no care or consideration for human rights. It's truly terrifying. No, it's not like America. It's beyond America, okay? It's a little bit worse. Our American prison system is pretty bad. But at least the things that happen in the buildup to the American prison system there's some semblance of logic and some semblance of order. Yeah, they arrested like 2% of the population. Is beyond USA. Salvi here. I still can't believe how brainwashed he's got former FMLN members to vote for him. I have friends whose parents flew home to vote for him. Yeah, a lot of the Salvadorans they like him. In Latin America, I feel like there's a which way Western man moment, and all the reactionary right wingers, they like Bukele, and all of the leftist, socialist adjacent the Latin American countries are not too fond of him. So FMLN is the leftist party of El Salvador. I know, but I'm saying that like he has been able to win a lot of favor amongst all Salvadorans. They're not even deporting. They're sending people to concentration camps. These people can't even just go live in another country. Yeah, that's the other side of this. It is pretty terrifying. And yeah, I mean, that's the brief little background on Nayib Bukele, right? That's the brief background on Nayib Bukele. Very far right, very reactionary. Interestingly enough, Donald Trump used to shit on Bukele a lot and would claim that like Nayib Bukele was also dumping his asylum, dumping his own MS-13 gang members directly into the United States of America. But I guess they've patched that up. They've patched their relationship seemingly, as he is using the CCOT facility as a slave labor concentration camp that we have outsourced to El Salvador. Truly horrifying stuff that's taking place here. Yeah, this is the especially horrifying part of this. Before the pool entered, this exchange was captured on the El Salvador government's live stream. Trump endorses sending homegrown U.S. prisoners to El Salvador, meaning American citizens to notorious foreign prisons.
People wanted to change everything, and they wanted to. He demanded, they love you. They love what you do. I'm not for support. I want him to do, for homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said, homegrown's are next. The homegrown's built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right.
He says the homegrown ones are next. You guys built about 5 more spaces. He goes, yeah, we got space. It's not a Twitter video issue. This is not supposed to be live, chat. This is a hot mic.
And
This is a hot mic, okay? This is not, we were not supposed to hear this. Before, as Jonathan Lemire, co-host of the Morning Show, says, this is before the pool entered. This exchange was captured on the El Salvador government's live stream. Trump endorses sending homegrown U.S. prisoners to El Salvador, meaning the American citizens to notorious foreign prisons. And it's not even just a hot mic. I believe this is something that the Trump administration has talked about already. It's something that Bukele has talked about already. So that's it. To be fair, he said it before. He said it shortly thereafter in the press pool too. Yeah. It's not something that they're hiding. Sure. Here's a question. Are you deporting Are you considered deporting American citizens to El Salvador? Trump says, yeah, that includes them. You think they're a special type of people or something?
Open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S.
People on Twitter are already defending it. We're so cooked. Yeah. I mean, they're Nazis. There's not really anything else I can say about that. That's it. It's here. It's happening. They're fascists. They're really horny for this kind of violence. They don't really consider that this kind of violence may actually impact them in the long run. I don't know. This is every single day that goes by. Like, I joke about it being Burger Reich or whatever, but like, it's not really a joke. These guys are actually straightforward, blood-curdling fascists. They are baying for blood. They want it. They're excited at the prospect for this kind of structure to become legally calcified. They want to test the boundaries. They're testing the boundaries right now in terms of like what they can get away with. They've already eradicated any sort of mechanism of pushback. There's not a lot of work you can get. Like, one of the most important and yet like somewhat quiet actions that the Trump administration took was against law firms. Okay. And we obviously covered it here, but there wasn't like that much anger or resentment towards this, partially because it's like there's outrage fatigue. It's impossible to pay attention to all the things that they're doing. But the reason why it was very significant, the reason why Donald Trump's attacks against law firms was very significant is because they basically came in and said, if you don't do pro bono work for us, we won't let you into federal buildings. And if you can't go into a federal building, you can't practice law. Like, you can't talk to your clients. Like, they basically said, you have to, you can't go against us. There are very few law firms that are still capable or interested in fighting back against them, against this government. Bro, pay attention on taxes on USA law firms. Regular fold. Folk don't know the importance. Anyway. But why send criminals to another country? I thought our prisons were for profit and want as many as possible. I think that the CCOT alignment is going to work where Eric Prince, from what I've read, Eric Prince Academy, right? Like, private mercenaries are going to take over some of the logistics from the Department of Homeland Security. That's number one. Number two, they're most likely going to do a joint partnership with American corporations, I suspect, like American private prison corporations, where they can open up these facilities or manage these facilities, these concentration camps, for pennies on the dollar, as opposed to having them operate on U.S. soil, where there are at least some kind of constitutional hurdles that they have to avoid. So I suspect that they will utilize El Salvador, purchase the land, engage in a land lease agreement with the Salvadoran government, and it will still be like, American private prison corporations will make money off of this, I suspect. By sending them to another country, it becomes foreign policy too. That's what Trump has started saying. Yeah. There's a bunch of reasons as to why sending them to El Salvador is a benefit for a fascist administration like this, and we're seeing it. One of the benefits from their perspective is, well, we can't return them, even when the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, says you have to return this person. You were not supposed to send this person. This person is an active withdrawal, as in due process kicked in. He went through the court system. The American government literally cleared this Maryland resident cleared a higher standard of proof to get a withdrawal to El Salvador. As in, that, as in the asylum application beyond that, is easier to prove. It is harder to prove a withdrawal to El Salvador than it is to get an asylum application through. Okay? That's precisely the reason why the Supreme Court gave a unanimous decision on the facilitation of the return of this, or withdrawal, withholding, sorry. Thank you, Jay Mershon. Like, there are different mechanisms to defend yourself against, like, deportation. A withholding of removal to El Salvador, which is where he's from, is a de facto harder to prove in courts than getting an asylum application done. And it means de facto that, like, you're not supposed to remove this person. You're not supposed to deport this person. Or even if this person was to, I don't know, do something heinous, right? Like a deportable crime, they would not be able to deport him to El Salvador. They would deport him somewhere else. But this person never did that, for the record. He's not a part of any gang. He has, as far as I understand, there's no crime that he's committed. And yet, the actual crime that was committed in this process was done by the government, which then admitted to the wrongdoing. Anyway, let's continue with this, and then we'll do...
U.S. citizens, fully naturalized American.
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What, do you think there's special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have...
With a simple administrative error, the U.S. now has wholesale SCOTUS approval to illegally detain and deport any U.S. citizen that they want. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't go that far, but... yeah, Donald Trump is now entertaining the notion of kidnapping, blackbagging, and shipping off American, natural-born U.S. citizens to a different country. This is new. This is new territory. A lot of the stuff that they're doing is new territory, for the record. Straw man argument too strong. It's not even a straw man. There is no straw man that he's engaging in. He just, like, made up a couple cases that are gruesome in his mind and said, yeah, we're going to ship those guys off to El Salvador. Okay, we're going to ship those guys off to the El Salvador torture slave facility. Aren't people just going to revolt if this admin goes full fascist like this? I don't know. I don't think so. Especially on this stuff. On the deportation stuff, I think a lot of people are utterly oblivious. They are utterly oblivious to the actions that this administration is taking. And I think on the Israel stuff, on the deportation stuff, which goes hand in hand, it is far more consequential than the trade wars, okay? And this isn't to say that, like, the tariffs and the exemptions are not consequential. It's far more consequential than the Doge cuts, which isn't to say that those Doge cuts aren't consequential. But this, ironically enough, this thing that not enough people are paying attention to is far more significant for our future. Because the reality of the matter is, you do the Doge cuts, people revolt, okay? People rise up. Let's say they fire every federal employee, right? And then the people go, what the f*** are you doing? You just fired every single person. How dare you? You start protesting in the street. His administration comes in and black bags key leadership in those protests, and they ship them off to El Salvador. Boom. All of a sudden, there's nothing. You can't do anything. There's no free speech anymore at this point. There's no due process anymore at this point. And when you get deported to the CCOT facility, you have no way of return. So it doesn't even matter. It is one of due process and First Amendment rights are the most consequential remaining the most consequential remaining protections that we have that they are actively destroying. And ironically, the sad state of affairs is that many of these people are either completely oblivious to this stuff. I've been ringing the alarm bells on this for quite a while now. And I think that most Americans are completely either A, oblivious to this, or B, perhaps even worse than being oblivious, the ones who are knowledgeable about what's going on here are in support of it. They are championing it. It's a truly terrifying predicament.
If the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning?
Yeah. You said this. You said that if SCOTUS says someone need to be returned, you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. Why don't you say, isn't it wonderful we're keeping criminals out of the country? Like, that's his reaction to this is, you are in violation of the Supreme Court orders. Here, we'll just watch the full thing. But basically, the question is, Mr. President, you are directly in violation of the Supreme Court orders. What do you have to say about this? And his response is, it's great. It's great that we're keeping terrorists out of this country. By the way, for the record, there is no evidence whatsoever. There's only evidence to the contrary, okay, of this wrongly deported U.S. man, this Maryland resident, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. There is no evidence whatsoever that he's in MS-13. There's only evidence to suggest that he is directly in the crosshairs of MS-13. And yet, and this is something that the federal government has also personally acknowledged. And yet they still, on the one hand, say he's MS-13, and then also on the other hand, say there's no way we can bring him back.
With you because you want to stop crime, and so do we. And it's very, very effective. And I want to just say hello to the people of El Salvador and say they have one hell of a president. Okay, and I mean that, and I know him well. I know him as a very young man, Marco. Even younger than you. You know, he started pretty young.
He'll always be younger.
Young at heart. But I want to thank you for the great job you're doing. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to be here in the Oval Office with the President and leader of the free world. We're very happy, and we're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem, a terrorism problem that you need help with. And we're a small country, but if we can help, we can do it. And we actually turned the murder capital of the world, that was the journalists call it, right? Murder capital of the world, into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. And, you know, sometimes they say that we imprison thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions. So, you know, like,
It's very good. Who gave him that line? Do you think I can use that?
Yes. And in fact, Mr. President, you have 350 million people to liberate. Yes. But to liberate 350 million people, you have to imprison some. You know, that's the way it works, right? You cannot just, you know, free the criminals and think crime's going to go down magically. You have to imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans that are asking for the end of crime and the end of terrorism. And it can be done. I mean, you're doing it already. And I'm sure that people have seen the change.
Why is he sucking Trump/America's boot? What do you mean? This is the dream for him. Everybody knows that if you want to have a permanent dictatorship till the end of time, especially in a Latin American country, you have to be America's dog. That's how you get all the benefits. You get money, you get political support. That's it. This is all. These are all of his wishes being realized in broad daylight in real time. Bukele has been able to generate a lot of goodwill, partially as a consequence of how violent MS-13 was, and how much people were, how much people just could not deal with the impact of MS-13's violence, and basically turned his police apparatus into a gang that is even more powerful than MS-13, partially while collaborating with MS-13, potentially collaborating with MS-13 as well. This is the suspicion that people have.
In the streets, a long way to go because you're just initiating your second term, but it's clear that, with the numbers.
What is this? Oh my God, you guys shit on Bukele way too much. Yeah, he's authoritarian, but you guys don't shit on Xi Jinping like this. Brother, what the f are you talking about? What kind of industrial policy has Nayib Bukele implemented in El Salvador? Like, what do you mean? He's just like a straightforward right-wing dipshit fascist. Like, that's it. His claim to fame here is basically building slave labor prisons and holding people unjustifiably in said slave labor prisons, like no due process whatsoever. Virtually every single humanitarian organization has been writing extensively about the CCOT facility and how horrifying it is. I think the horrifying aspect of CCOT in and of itself is obvious to everyone, right? You either get put into the slammer where you have no daylight, you don't see any light whatsoever, you're in pitch black darkness, isolated from everybody else, or when you're not, when you're in general population, you're under constant surveillance and constant light where you can't even sleep. Okay, sleep deprivation is the norm in these facilities. But outside of that, you have very little opportunity to speak with the outside world, very little opportunity to speak with your lawyers, and no way to combat an unjustifiable imprisonment. You don't have to sympathize with MS-13 in this process. You have to recognize that, one, these are torture facilities, okay? And two, more importantly than the fact that these are torture facilities, the people that are being put into these torture facilities, it's because Hasan can't relate. He never went when crime was rampant. Oh, yeah. He got rid of crime. I don't know. You think you understand how bad it was? Chatters, please, for the love of Christ and all things holy, listen to my words, okay? I'm explaining why people still believe in Bukele. And I'm also telling you how stupid it is to make the assumption that crime is gone now. It's done in El Salvador. It doesn't exist. When you got the government doing the crime, what will it take for one of your family members to get black bagged and falsely considered to be MS-13 for you to go, okay, maybe this wasn't the best idea? He imprisoned 2% of the population, dude. What are we talking about? There's already plenty of evidence to show that his police force goes in. Yeah, that's why I said my family's from El Salvador. Yes, dumb. That's why I said, what will it take when one of your family members gets black bagged and sent to CCOT and you know that they're not a part of MS-13? Well, is that when you will comprehend what is happening? I'm not saying the situation was better in the past. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply stating that the heavy-handed nature of these apprehensions and the lack of due process and the torturous conditions within the facilities implies that the criminal leadership has exchanged hands. It went from MS-13 to Nayib Bukele. Salvadoran that studies violence here. First of all, double Bukele forever and always. And I doubt Kilmer is dead, despite what TikTok believes. And if he is, then it was the state that killed him. People overlooked it in CCOT. Rival gangs are incarcerated next to each other. And there has not, to my knowledge, been an issue with that. Instead, the state has been responsible for killing and torturing people. Yeah. There's also suspicion that Bukele himself, in a deal not dissimilar to like previous deals that Mexican leadership have done with the cartels, most likely also cut a separate side deal with MS-13 as well, which is part of the reason why he wanted the American MS-13 leadership that was apprehended to be sent expeditiously to El Salvador before they were able to make public statements about the collaborative nature of MS-13 and Nayib Bukele. I feel like gang unity might arise because of such horrific treatment. I mean, there's not really much you can do. It's a concentration camp. Yeah. This is the size of El Salvador overlaid over Dallas, Texas. Why would we send anyone there besides nefarious reasons? Is Guantanamo, without having to talk to Cuba, it's ideal for Trump? Exactly. You think we don't have facilities to deal with this shit? Of course we do. It's just this way you get to wash your hands over the death camp happening on U.S. soil. Did you not see that I said only the worst is into CCOT and the rest focus on rehab? CCOT is the worst? No, you're wrong. You're just, I think you're delusional. You're absolutely wrong. No, it's not the worst of the worst that are sent to CCOT, dumb. What are you talking about? That's the entire problem here. No, it's random people, random street vendors, for example. It's whoever the police decide is MS-13, and there's no due process. That's kind of the whole problem here happening in America as well. You're just making shit up. No, Nayib Bukele initially wanted to focus on rehabilitation, focus on solving the underlying economic problems where crime manifests. That's true. That is how Nayib Bukele actually rose to power, and then very quickly was like, yeah, all that. They literally grab people for tattoos, even if it's not MS-13 related tattoos. They grab people for being street vendors if they've been threatened by MS-13. It has nothing to do with actual MS-13 gang activity. The idea that it's like the most rugged of the MS-13 criminals that are being shipped into the facility is wrong. And that is just for the Salvadorans. Like, we're not even talking about the people that we've shipped over there. Okay? It's outlined in this article. El Salvador named one of the world's safest countries. At what cost? El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele declared an initial month-long state of emergency in March 2022 due to heightened gang violence and a wave of murders, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. So far, the state of emergency has been renewed 30 times, the latest of which was announced by the Salvadoran Legislative Assembly on October 4th. To date, this tool has allowed 604 days without homicides and the arrest of more than 82,000 people linked to gangs. In addition, it has positioned the country among the safest in the world. The state of emergency suspended several Salvadoran rights and freedoms as per the OAS. 1. Right of assembly, freedom of association, right to be informed of the reasons for detention, inviolability of correspondence and telecommunications. Regardless, the entity does recognize a constant decrease in homicide cases, with the rate per 100,000 people going from 21.2 in 2020 to 4.9 in 2023. Okay? The alleged human rights violations. El Salvador has been called out for massive human rights violations, including thousands of arbitrary detentions and violations of due process, as well as torture and ill treatment, according to Amnesty International. In a report published on December 2023, the organization detailed a rise in systematic detentions, forced disappearances, and instances of torture since the introduction of the state of emergency. There's also suspicion that he most likely did a secret deal with MS-13. The other suspicion also is that the government is not correctly clocking the murders as well. They're just not they're just not reporting the murders potentially and the disappearances to artificially lower the murder rate as well. And it's been successful in terms of propaganda. It's been successful. The remaining Salvadoran population that isn't imprisoned love it. They love him and they love this. That's how terrifying the MS-13 crime situation was to begin with. Okay? So you're just going to speculate? No, there is plenty of evidence as to why there is a secret side deal that he wait, hold on 1 second. I just got to do something here. Okay. Washington Post covered it as well. Bukele agreed to accept hundreds of suspected gang members living in the United States. In return, he wanted the U.S. to send him less than a dozen MS-13 gang members in U.S. custody. Why was he so intent on getting the MS-13 guys? Washington Post reports. Some Salvadoran analysts believe Bukele wants the gang leaders back so they won't testify about his government's involvement with them and potentially put him in legal trouble. If these returns of Salvadoran gang members continue, it takes away the possibility that the U.S. judicial system will open a case against Bukele for negotiations and agreements with terrorist groups, said Juan Martinez de Bucion, an anthropologist who has studied the gangs. Bukele has denied making deals with gangs. Such negotiations by his predecessors were highly unpopular domestically. A lot of ultra conservative people and even non-conservative people in El Salvador like Bukele. They think he is. They think he has been able to put a dent in the crime that MS-13 is engaged in, and to a certain degree, it has been successful. The problem here, however, is not that the incredible torture prison scheme that he has created is horrifying in and of itself. The issue also is that they're grabbing random people off the street with no due process. Like, what the f are you talking about? Yeah, if you become the crime, if the government becomes the MS-13 gang, then yeah, technically there is no crime because it's a police state. Operational autonomy. Just curious, what kind of deal would he make with MS-13? What does MS-13 get? Yeah, this is similar to what narco politics looks like in Mexico, as well as the chatter correctly points out. Operational autonomy and legal immunity in some cases, as long as they stay within government boundaries. Don't f the bag too much. then why are his approval ratings so high? I don't know. Think about the United States of America. The United States of America is an even better analog to this because the rates of crime, specifically violent crime, are nowhere near as high as El Salvador. And yet the people were made to believe that there is like an undocumented migrant crime panic that has taken place in this country, and therefore are totally fine with these sorts of insane, unprecedented schemes that the Trump administration is engaging with right now. It's directly Hitlerian policy. And most people are either A, oblivious to it, or B, the ones who are aware of it are in support of it. So think about how that can happen. Try to analyze how that can happen in a country where there isn't the same level of crime. And then think about what it would look like, how bloodthirsty normal Americans would be like if there was that level of crime as well. The United States Department of State also recognizes the allegations in their El Salvador Human Rights Report in 2023, signaling arbitrary killings, cruel treatment by security forces, harsh and life-threatening prison conditions, and extensive gender-based violence as some of the barriers which have undermined President Bukele's security strategy. The Socorro Judicio Humanitario Foundation, which provides free legal advice to innocent Salvadorans criminalized by the state of emergency, has reported 315 deaths of incarcerated people since the establishment of the measure in 2022. The most prevalent causes of death signaled by the association are violence and lack of medical attention, although unknown causes of death have increased in 2024. These people only had the right to a hearing for the imposition of captivity measures, after which they died under the guardianship of the state. Amnesty International also explained that the widespread pattern of arbitrary arrest targets people from marginalized communities especially, which already suffer from crime and extreme poverty. The conditions that inmates experience within these prisons has also been heavily denounced by human rights organizations. As per the OAS, incarcerated individuals are stripped down to their underwear, placed in small cells where they sleep on the floor, and do not have access to clean water or food. So the torturous conditions are already inhumane and unacceptable. Even when they are torturing MS-13 gang members, by the way, just so you understand. But the major problem here on top of that is that it's not all MS-13 gang members. It's not all rugged criminals. It's just what the state has decided is a rugged criminal. Yeah, Salvadoran here who's been and is going again this year. Reason for Bukele's high popularity is because living conditions have improved. It's just that simple. So they see the improvement and think, well, it's working, and either don't care or see it as necessary. They've fallen for the propaganda. And for the record, we're talking about what's going on in El Salvador, but what's happening in El Salvador is no longer just about El Salvador, because we're sending Americans to this torture facility. Okay? And the reasons as to why we're doing that, the reasons as to why we're sending Americans or, legal permanent residents and potentially Americans down the line to this torture slave camp without due process, with no mechanisms to bring back these people, even if the Supreme Court demands that they bring back these people, is because we want to have an unaccountable torture slave labor colony that is not on U.S. soil, where we can just like ship enemies of the state to. And considering that the Trump administration is entertaining the notion of even drawing penises on a Tesla as an act of terror, that can mean anyone and everyone. It's very weird that a lot of people refuse to recognize how this will them down the line. It is shocking.
The border, when even in Democrat-run cities, they get a help from the work you're doing. So I'm really happy to be here, honored, and eager to help.
Well, we had a terrible thing happen. We had an administration that allowed people to come in freely into our country from not only South America, but from...
Tip, don't blow up a car. Yeah, okay, man. Blowing up a car, by the way, is a crime. It's just totally separate from a crime that can get you as an American citizen to be black bagged and shipped without due process to a slave camp where you might die. Okay? What are you talking about? Like, what are we doing? What is this attitude? Just kill everyone then, That's this is the logical conclusion that so many dumb mouth-breathing fascists come to, where it's just like, oh, you did a crime? die. I'm going to kill you. Like, that's what you're saying. No reason. I've just decided you've done a crime and therefore I'm going to kill you. I'm going to shoot you dead. And it's awesome that they're doing that. Like, you have no imagination on how this could one day harm you, okay?
All over the world, many from the Congo in Africa, Asia, all over the world, Europe, rough parts of Europe. And they came from prisons, and they came from mental institutions, and they came from gangs, and the gangs of Venezuela and other places.
I don't do crime.
And
Dog, normal daily activities that you engage in today could be considered a crime tomorrow. How is this difficult to understand? You are a idiot. Also, it doesn't matter if you do a crime. If there's no due process, someone can just say you are doing a crime and black bag you anyway. That's the whole point of eroding due process. If there's no free speech, for example, and no due process, for example, these are two things that the Trump administration is eroding at this moment. Someone could just decide that they don't like the thought crime that you engaged in and black bag you. The only thing holding this entire structure together for you in your mind is the fantasy that it will never happen to you or a loved one. You don't actually need to do something. If there's no due process, someone could just claim that you did something and it's enough for you to get sent to the slave labor camp.
hundreds of thousands and even millions of them came. 21 million people altogether, but many of the people that came, just a tremendous percentage of them were criminals, in some cases violent criminals. We had 11,088 known murderers. Half of them murdered more than one person. This was allowed by a man who, what he did to our country is just unbelievable. So we're straightening it out. We're getting him out. But what they did and what that party did to our country, open borders, anybody could come in. As soon as I heard that, I said, every prison's going to be emptied out into our country. That's what happened. And we're straightening it out. And we just had numbers. We had the highest recruiting numbers in the history of our country going into police departments. And a year ago, we had the lowest numbers. You couldn't hire a
biggest
police.
change. Yeah.
Nobody's
From
ever
the
seen.
lowest to the highest.
And the military
said,
now,
okay.
Marines, the Army.
Okay, do you understand the point, though? Do you understand how this is dangerous for everyone, including yourself? No matter how dumb you are, even the dumbest person, I think, can be convinced that they are also under threat.
Air Force, Coast Guard. Every slot is, I mean, we have the best numbers we've ever had. We call it recruitment numbers. And we've never had anything like it. We had records on at every single level. But very important, the policemen. The policemen are joining forces now that we're having a hard time with policemen because we weren't protecting our police. Yeah. And we cherish our police. The police are great, and the firemen and everybody else. But we have the highest numbers that we've ever had, the most enthusiasm. We have great enthusiasm, and on trade and other things, we're doing great. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars. We made 2 weeks ago. I gave them a little bit of a pause because you have to show a little flexibility. But we go back to what we have to do. The markets have been very strong once they got used to it. But we were losing $2 billion a day. There's no company big like this. This is the biggest deal ever made. Now we're making $3 billion a day. We're a great country, but we had stupid people running this country, and I can say it. But what they've done to us at the border should never and can never be forgotten. It's a sin, what they did, and you are helping us out, and we appreciate it.
Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It has dropped, 95%? It's incredible.
As of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get out with the fake news, like CNN. CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country, actually.
Yeah,
but it's a shame. You're right. Isn't that a great question? Why doesn't the media? Why don't they put out numbers?
Yeah, 99%. I mean, it's crazy, right?
We're doing
It's
great.
a crazy turnaround.
Christie, could you maybe say a couple of words about the border, how we're doing?
You know, it's just been absolutely phenomenal what a great leader can do. Clear direction, our laws matter. We should only have people in our country that love us, and the Border Patrol and our ICE officers and law enforcement officers have done fantastic work. So we're proud of them. Now we just need to get the criminals and murderers and rapists and dangerous gang members and terrorist organizations out of our country. So, Mr. President Bukele, we thank you very much for your partnership. It has been wonderful for us to be able to have somewhere to send the worst of the worst and someone to partner with.
This entire conversation is happening on the heels of a person who demonstrably is not the worst of the worst, that the American federal government has actively admitted was not the worst of the worst. The El Salvador president refusing to order the return of the wrongly deported U.S. man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, okay, despite a unanimous Supreme Court decision, 9-0 Supreme Court decision, in direct violation of the Supreme Court's orders, that the Trump administration is utilizing the language surrounding the Supreme Court's unanimous decision to their advantage, while also simultaneously saying that they have no interest in facilitating this anyway. The president of El Salvador said in a meeting with Donald Trump at the White House on Monday that he would not order the return of a Maryland man who was deported in error to a Salvadoran mega prison. The question is preposterous, Nayib Bukele said in the Oval Office on Monday, where he was welcomed by Trump and spoke with the president and members of his cabinet. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I'm not going to do it. This person is not a terrorist. This person is not even in MS-13. This person is in the crosshairs of MS-13. The American judiciary, the American justice system found that this person was not only not MS-13, but also simultaneously under threat from MS-13 if he were ever to be sent back to El Salvador. Okay? The government said, we cannot deport this person, because you don't usually deport someone to another country in any case. But even if there was a situation where this person committed an act so vicious that they were deportable, they cannot be deported to El Salvador. Okay? He was in the process of going through his asylum application when he was black bagged and shipped away. And not only did all that happen, thank you. Not only did all this happen, the federal government also admitted that it was wrong. They engaged in an administrative error and falsely deported this person to El Salvador. He had I don't have the power to return him to the United States, and said he would not release the man into El Salvador either. I'm not very fond of releasing terrorists into the country. The comments came a day after the Trump administration claimed that it is not legally obligated to secure the return of Abrego Garcia, despite the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that the administration should facilitate bringing him back. Lawyers for the Justice Department argued in court filings on Sunday that asking El Salvador to return Abrego Garcia from a notorious mega prison should be considered foreign relations and was therefore outside of the scope of the courts. How is the ruling enforceable? No ruling is technically enforceable. The judiciary has the power to persuade. That's it. Nothing else. The judiciary, the Supreme Court does not have any mechanism of enforcement beyond what it says goes. If the federal government refuses to follow through on the Supreme Court's decision, you create a constitutional crisis. That means the entirety of the judiciary is done. It's over. There's no power anymore. Yeah, the judiciary requires a buy-in from the executive and society at large. They have no enforcement mechanism. This is a true constitutional crisis in every sense of the term. Yes. So what's happening right now with Nayib Bukele is the Trump administration basically saying, what are you going to do about it?
We'd like to continue that partnership because it's been a powerful message of consequences. Mr. President, you wanted people to know that there was consequences if you break our laws and harm our people and endanger families. And this is a clear consequence for the worst of the worst, that we have somewhere to put them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we even had this gang member from Venezuela, one of the ones you sent, and we interviewed him just to get some information, etc. from them. And he said, "Oh, well, I got arrested 6 times, but they released me the 6th time, so I should be released again." And then I said, "Well, what's the last thing you do?" And he said, "Well, I shot a cop in the leg, but I didn't kill him." I just shot him in the leg. And we're like, this guy was arrested 6 times here in the United States, 6 times. He was released 6 times, and in the he was released 5 times, and the last time he was sent to El Salvador, right? So he's not getting released. But the last time he shot a cop, actually, and he shot him in the leg. So these are, like you said, there's something broken.
It's the liberal establishment. But they're not running things anymore in this country, and we're run by, and I don't say conservative, I don't say anything, we're run by people with great common sense.
Yeah, common sense.
Yeah, that's not the point, is it? That's not who we're talking about right now, is it? Even that guy should still go through the criminal justice system here in the United States of America. If he shot an American cop, he needs to go to American prison. That's my attitude on this issue, but like sending him to El Salvador is insane. It doesn't make any sense. Having said that, however, the overwhelming majority of people that we've sent down to the CCOT facility so far are not even convicted of any sort of wrongdoing. They're not even accused of any sort of wrongdoing. The overwhelming majority have no criminal record whatsoever. They've been grabbed off the streets for erroneous claims with this like incredibly stupid, arbitrary point system that they've designed to be like, oh, you got a tattoo? And you're brown, it's over. You're going to CCOT. It's not even about deporting them at this point back to their nation of origin. It's just straight up permanently jailing them in a slave camp. It is insane.
It's all common sense. It's not liberal conservative. It's common sense. Like, do you allow men to play in women's sports? Do you allow men to box your women and box? Because I know you have a lot of boxing.
That's violence.
That's abuse of a woman. It's abuse of a woman. But we have people that fight to the death because they think men should be able to play in women's sports.
Why should he get fed in American prisoners with taxpayer money? They're not even citizens. Oh my God, brother. Oh my God. Oh my God. How are we having this conversation over and over and over again every single time? Okay. The American criminal justice system has a higher standard until Donald Trump had a higher standard. Okay. The entire purpose is to make sure that justice is served. You understand? If an undocumented migrant shoots and kills, I doubt that. What do you mean you doubt that? Well, that's not an argument. Okay, never mind. You doubt it. Okay, well, I guess owned. If you or one of your loved ones was wronged by an undocumented migrant or a documented migrant or a U.S. citizen, you want the American courts to at the very least go through the process and punish these people, convict them, and charge them of the crimes and the wrongdoing that they engaged in. It's so stupid. I hate that because Americans are so vindictive and so insane when it comes to crime and punishment that they straight up, no, I would want the death penalty. Dude, it's over, man. We are just a nation of bloodthirsty fascists, okay? Every suburb has Adolf Hitler. Like 9-month subscriber, okay? 9-month subscriber, just straight up Adolf Hitler when it comes to crime and punishment. No, I would want the death penalty. Sick. When I hear stuff like this, I do think, not the worst. Not the worst that we have Donald Trump. We kind of do deserve it. Why should legacy Americans care? That's what they want. No. Wait, what? Don't forget, USA is scaring the immigrant working force. How about we stole the most brilliant peoples from the vassal states? What? What are you saying? Did you get hit in the head over the course of the past 3 days? Legacy Americans? Are you LARPing as a Tucker Carlson fan? Like, what the happening here? İki buçukta yaparsan yerim. God damn it.
Sports, and some of those sports, it wouldn't matter much, but it still matters. But some of them are very dangerous for women.
Some years ago, like you said, a decade ago or so, women rights movements were pressuring so that we enacted specific laws to avoid men abusing women. And I think those laws were great because there were a lot of men abusing women. But now some of the same people are trying to backtrack on that and actually trying to make new laws allowing men to abuse women in sports. So actually that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
It's crazy. They have weightlifting records, right?
Yeah.
a woman gets up and swings. She's incredible.
Oh
guy
my
gets up
God.
and
They're
beats-
talking about like trans athletes. I'm losing my mind, dude. This is such. Ugh. This is what we deserve. This is what we deserve. We deserve the divine punishment that Donald Trump is dishing out to all Americans. We really do deserve it. We're so stupid. We're such dumb hogs, dude. We're championing this. We're like, this is great. This is awesome. Look at our brilliant president doing what's right, combating the real issues, you know, trans athletes.
It's about 100 pounds. What are you going to do? A record that hadn't been broken in 18 years. You know, they put on an ounce, quarter of an ounce, eighth of an ounce for 18 years. Now they have a guy come up, ping. The whole thing is crazy. But they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I said to my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. And but I watched this morning, there was a congressman fighting to the death for men.
Documented New York reports that one of the Venezuelans deported to El Salvador was a 19-year-old with no criminal record, no tattoos, and who wasn't even a target of the ICE operation, but ended up sent there anyway. An ICE agent even said he's not the one when arrested. Wilmer only found out his son had been detained after receiving a phone call on March 15th from his nephew, Luis, who lives with them. That morning was their last time together. They had gone around the corner to do their laundry. Later that day, Wilmer said his son met with a friend to get some help with some errands at the American Red Cross. He learned this from Luis, who looked at the situation from inside the apartment. When his son was on his way back, just steps from his home, ICE agents stopped him. The officers grabbed him and two other boys right at the entrance to our building. One said, no, he's not the one, like they were looking for someone else. But the other said, take him anyway. That moment marked the beginning of Wilmer's search for answers. Answers he's still waiting for. This is 19-year-old Merville Gutierrez, who was grabbed off the street in New York City days before he was sent to El Salvador. His family insists he has no connection to Tren de Agua. He doesn't even have any tattoos. 19-year-old, take him anyway. This is Gestapo shit. This is stuff that we learned about in history books. Many of you in this community learned those lessons and are terrified. But some, I think, learned those lessons were like, why don't we do that here?